What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here. Today we'll be discussing niches or specializations in the personal training space. What is a niche? Should you have one? And what should your niche be if you should have one? These things are what we're going to be breaking down here shortly. So first off, what is a niche? Also, some people call it a niche, and there's a few other pronunciations out there, but for today's video we're going to be sticking with niche. A niche is a specialized segment of the market for a particular kind of product or service. So basically, for all us personal trainers, a niche would be specializing working with a specific type of personal training client. Essentially, you'd be extra skilled at working with a particular group, and you would mostly train that type of client. Some niches we could choose from would be working with weight loss clients, working with clients focused on strength, working with older clients, working with athletes. The list goes on and on. The problem here is that not all of these niches are created equal. Some are better than others, and many aren't popular enough in most areas to enable you to make an adequate living. So let's talk about who watching this video right now should have a niche and who shouldn't. I think the answer to that may surprise some of you. Before we jump into it, all I ask is that you consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. This is the best way to support this channel, which is a free resource for all fitness professionals. Thank you so much for that support, everyone. That support is what allows us to keep making free content like this, so I really do appreciate all of it. So getting into the meat of the discussion now, who watching this video doesn't need a niche? There is, in my opinion, a small group of trainers who is better off not niching down, or at the very least, niching down way less. To be included in this group, one or two things have to be true about your business. One, you either need to work alone or in a non-competitive area. If you're not competing with any trainers, or if the competition is minimal, then you don't have to niche down as much. Seems obvious, right? If it's just me and two other trainers working in a town of 15,000 people, assuming it's an area where people can afford training, I will do pretty well if I can help general population clients get to their goals. Most of these clients will be focused on weight loss, and of course some of them will want to work on strength or something else. When working in an environment like this, it's still good to have a few things about yourself that make you stand out. Don't get me wrong. Maybe you're extra skilled at teaching people the compound lifts or working with pregnant women, for instance. That being said, if you're in an area like this, again 15,000 people living around you with minimal competition, there is no need to focus on a smaller group like runners, for example. You're better off picking more broad categories like weight loss or strength gain, and then having a few things about yourself that make you unique. If you only focus on a more specific niche in an area like this, you probably won't be able to get enough clients to make a living. So niching down too much can do more harm than good here. The second type of trainer that doesn't need to niche down too much is the trainer that works in a more unique environment. When you work in a more specialized environment, that environment kind of becomes your niche. Some examples of what I'm talking about here could be private studio training, in-home personal training, and virtual personal training. Although virtual personal training is starting to become a much more saturated thing, so niching down there could make some sense depending on a few factors. But anyways, I've spent most of my career working in private personal training studios, and I can tell you firsthand that you typically don't need to niche down at all in those environments. Clients who seek out these private studios will come to you with a variety of different goals. Weight loss will be the most common one, but that's going to be true of personal training almost anywhere. You'll also see lots of other goals, such as strength gain, improving balance, etc. Niching down to a smaller demographic can be harmful here because, like I just said, people are coming to the studio with a variety of goals, and typically there are only a handful of trainers to work with all of those different clients. This means that you could specialize working in an environment like this a little bit, but anything much more than that could hurt more than it helps. When you're working in a smaller private studio that's more focused on training, like we said, to some extent that private studio is already your niche. In most areas, these facilities aren't too common, so they tend to attract clientele that prefers more privacy and less of that typical gym feel. Again, this atmosphere is already your niche, and you may not need to niche down any further than that. The same could be true of in-home personal training. You being willing to travel to someone's home already makes your service kind of a niche thing. That being said, if you're in an area where a lot of people are doing training in people's homes, you could have to niche down a little further to stand out. It really all depends on the area where you're going to be working. There are a few other examples of places where you could work where you probably wouldn't have to niche down as much, but I think you get the idea. So in recap, niching down or specializing in working with a specific demographic may not be worth it if 1. You'll be working alone or in a non-competitive area. 2. You'll be working in a unique environment that already niches your services down. If you don't have either of those two things going on, you should strongly consider specializing in something, or at the very least, niching your services down a bit. Most trainers are going to fall into this category where it's better to niche down. This would include trainers who are working at standard big box gyms, and it would also include trainers who are doing their own thing or running their own business in a competitive area. Again, in both of those cases, it most likely makes a lot of sense to niche down to stand out from the competition. Now, there are a handful of factors to consider when choosing a training niche. For me, it comes down to three things. One, are you actually more skilled at working with that particular demographic than the competition? Two, can you make a living training that demographic? And three, do you actually like training that demographic? So first things first, are you actually more skilled at working with the demographic that you want to specialize in working with? I would really make sure that the answer is yes to this one. Only specialize in working with a particular demographic if you are in fact extra skilled at working with that group. There are some things that you should do to ensure that you're ready to niche down to working with a specific group. The first and most obvious thing that you should consider doing is getting an advanced certification. For example, if I'm going to train moms and a large percentage of my clients are going to be pregnant, well, I should definitely consider getting a pre- and postnatal certification. After getting that certification, I should do some of my own research on the subject. Maybe my buddies over at Sorta Healthy have covered that already. Let's see what they have to say on training pregnant women. We don't actually have a video on that, but we will at some point soon. You get the idea though. Also, sometimes doing your own research on working with a demographic includes you getting into the trenches and trying out techniques that you're learning on yourself. If you want to train powerlifters or bodybuilders, you better be practicing what you preach. After getting an advanced certification and doing some research on the subject, the next thing you'd want to do is to start training some of those clients who fit into the demographic that you want to specialize in. At first, you'll want to just dip your toe into the water and only train the specific demographic a little bit to see if you like it. After you get a little hands-on experience with the specific client type, you can then decide if you want to try to attract more similar clients. The next part of this video is possibly the most important part, and unfortunately, it's the part where I'm going to break some of your hearts with honesty and logic. It's not that I really want to do that, but if you are early into your career, this is good stuff for you to hear. Anyways, most niches or specialties that trainers want to focus on are nowhere near practical or popular enough to make a living off of. I can't tell you how many trainers I've met over the years who are recently certified, or they're in the process of getting certified, and they're incredibly excited to train bodybuilders, powerlifters, and athletes. I pretty much always hold my tongue, but I know that within 6 months to a year, almost all of those trainers who came in wanting to train that demographic will have done one or two things. One, they've accepted that there aren't enough people in those niches who are willing to pay for training on a reoccurring basis, and they've started to train clients more focused on weight loss. Or two, they've realized personal training isn't what they thought it was, and they moved on to something else. Now, don't get me wrong, a very small percentage of trainers will be able to fully book themselves with any of the clients I just described. Again, those clients were athletes, bodybuilders, and powerlifters. Trainers who can make a living working with those types of clients are few and far between, and I feel like it's fairly obvious as to why that's the case. Generally speaking, bodybuilders and powerlifters already know how to work out. They may want to hire a trainer every once in a while for extra motivation, spotting, or form correction, but it would likely only be an occasional thing, not the reoccurring revenue you need. In the USA, you typically need a degree in exercise science and the CSCS cert to train serious athletes. No professional organization will hire you without those two things in the United States. Other countries could be different when it comes to that. To be honest, I'm not really sure. You definitely could get younger athletes on occasion. Working with high school aged athletes or younger could be a niche worth exploring for some of you. Sometimes I'll also hear trainers say they only want to train clients with X. And X could be kettlebells, clubs, barbells, body weight, etc. Truth be told, you probably could make any of that stuff work, but if you're looking to only rely on a limited toolkit, it could turn clients away as well. There are definitely examples of other niches that sound cool when you're talking about them, but you'd never be able to find enough clients to make that niche your target demographic. If you guys can think of any other good ones, let me know them down in the comments. Some training niches that definitely could be great, at least in terms of clients being willing to hire you for longer periods of time, could be older populations. These guys have money and free time, and they want to age the right way. Moms, I know I've talked about it before, but yeah, they're a great demographic. 2/3 to 3/4 of training clients are female, and moms want to look and feel good. Somewhat related to the first one, older populations, but working with people with orthopedic issues could also be a really great niche. A lot of people with orthopedic issues will want to improve improve their strength to reduce the chances of further injury. Anything with weight loss where you focus in on a key group can also be good. I worked with a trainer who almost exclusively trained busy working professionals focused on weight loss, and really these people were higher up executives at companies who were all over 45, and that trainer did really well. That being said, like we already mentioned, a lot of what will work depends on where you're located. If you're in a super densely populated area like New York City, you could choose practically any niche, and if you market it the right way and you're good at what you do, you should do well. If you're in a suburban area like I am, you do have to be a bit more careful when choosing your niche. At least you have to be a little bit more careful if training is going to be your main source of income. If training is just something you'll be doing on the side for fun, then I think you should just train whoever you like training the most and niche down to that group. This brings me to the third thing that you should have when it comes to choosing a niche demographic, and that is passion for working with that group. If I am knowledgeable, somewhat experienced, and passionate about working with a specific type of client, then that energy will shine through pretty much all of the time. This passion in particular makes it a lot easier to sell a service. People can pick up on it, and it makes everything we do that much more effective. If you're passionate about working with a particular group, it rarely feels like you actually have to sell anything. You're merely presenting something you believe in a positive way, and the client can either jump on board or not. In addition to making sales and everything else more natural and enjoyable, liking the niche you've chosen obviously just makes your overall life better too. I'm sure pretty much all of you guys have heard this quote at some point: if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, in my experience, this is 100% true. But anyways, what do you guys think? Should you have a niche as a trainer? If so, what are some promising ones that I didn't mention today? Make sure to let me know down below in the comments. Who knows, you could inspire someone else to start training a different type of client. As always, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, because it does help the channel to grow, and that does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, stay sorta healthy.